Embracing my villain era has honestly been one of the best things I've ever done, and I was definitely so scared of it. Like, I was so fearful to be disliked. I was so scared of like being socially ostracized, being rejected. But actually embodying it and recognizing that it's not because I'm literally actually a villain, and rather that that's people's perception of me when I choose to stand up for myself, has been extremely liberating. And I feel like this is the stage that you're in as well. If you clicked on this video, you are in a place where you are starting to stand up for yourself, starting to set boundaries, starting to recover from your people pleaser tendencies, starting to be the confident self that you want to be. And that, of course, requires the people who prefer you when you shrink, prefer you when you're small, to go. And I want to remind you that it is something to embrace, this era, something to recognize as a crucial part of your success journey, your growth journey, your confidence journey, your self-esteem journey. Part of the process of embodying your best self is to discard people and walk away from people and essentially offend people who prefer you when you basically shut the fuck up, when you were a minimized version of yourself. We're about to celebrate this period of time and this journey and see it as a flex. You should see being a villain in somebody else's story and somebody else villainizing you, or seeing you as like the baddie in their story, is actually such a sign of your growth, that you are not willing to tolerate bullshit from people that require you to abandon yourself in order to be around. When we have endured a lifetime of putting other people first, it can be a very disconcerting and very jarring experience to start not only putting yourself first, but also the reaction that that has from other people. You know, other people responding to you starting to put yourself first. And I will say off the bat that anybody that responds negatively to you setting boundaries, standing up for yourself, becoming a better version of you, being more confident, you know, starting to embody your more authentic self, has to go. Is not for you. Because if they require you to be a lesser version of yourself, an inauthentic version of yourself, a smaller, shrunk down version of yourself, they're not for you. Categorically, they're not for you. And that's why it's such a celebration and such a great thing when, or a sign and evidence that you have grown, when somebody does see you as the villain. Because it's not because you literally are the villain, it's because they can no longer control you, they can no longer take advantage of you, they can no longer utilize you for what they wanted to before, what they used, you know, they used to be able to take and take and take from you, and you're now setting boundaries and they can't do that anymore. So they're going to see that as a personal attack. They're going to see that as offensive towards them. You know, they're going to find that offensive because you're no longer putting them first, and that is, you know, that's not why they chose you. It was because they literally saw you as usable. They saw you as somebody that was willing to give them everything, and they saw you as somebody to essentially, you know, extract energy and extract time, effort, whatever from. It was a transactional relationship for them. It was never a genuine relationship, a genuine friendship, whatever it might be. It was always for the purpose of taking energy from you with no consequence. The cognitive dissonance that goes on in an abuser or user's mind when you start to stand up for yourself is so disconcerting for them, so you know, overwhelming and like scary for them, because they know that they're losing control, and they will try and claim back that control as much as they can. Which is why when you stand up for yourself, or you try and you know, set boundaries, they are going to make out as if you're the problem, as if you are somehow, you know, doing something so unforgivable that you basically, it's an opportunity for them to try and get you back into that place of being their energy source, like going back into the position that you were once, you know, where you gave them energy, you gave them time when they really didn't deserve it. They want to continue to extract energy from you, and they're going to attempt to do that by demonizing you setting boundaries, by criticizing you for being confident or having grown. Their brain is struggling to wrap their head around the fact that, you know, surely they're not realizing that I've been using them all this time. Like, surely that's not happening. Like, that's really fucking with me. So in order to actually self-soothe, which is something that I realize as well, when people, you know, criticize you, do the Darvo effect, which is where they criticize your reaction to their initial disrespect, they're doing all of these tricks in the book, you know, like changing the subject, distracting the conversation, criticizing your response to their disrespect. All of this is self-soothing. All of it is an attempt by them not only to keep you where you are in that position that they need you, but also to soothe themselves that they haven't been caught out. Because when you are an abuser, you're, I don't want to say narcissist because I don't know enough about narcissism to be like authoritative on that particular, topic, but people that perhaps have narcissistic tendencies, are users, manipulators, they have an idea of themselves in their head that they're perfect, they don't do anything wrong, or that they know themselves fully. And when essentially you fuck with that idea of themselves, or when you fuck with their idea of themselves, they're going to panic. They're going to find that really, really jarring, and they're going to do everything in their power to make out as if you're the problem, that you're crazy, that what you say about them or what you're sort of bringing into question about them, maybe subtly and by association, is wrong. They want to soothe themselves and they want to reassure themselves that what you're bringing to light is wrong and that they could not possibly be the problem. This is why, again, like I said, they kind of start to follow these methods of, Darvo, blaming your reaction, changing the subject, distracting, getting you kind of all riled up, is to actually avoid talking about what they've done, to actually prevent you from standing up for yourself and thinking that you have done the right thing. And I've definitely experienced this, like pretty much all of the friendships that I've now moved away from, when I decided to end it, it was because they did something disrespectful, or I, sort of said, this doesn't make me feel good, I don't like it when you do this. And each time they were kind of self-soothing in their response. So they'd reiterate back to me what happened in the situation, but from kind of their perspective. So it wouldn't be this objective thing. It would be using ways of sort of like minimizing their disrespect. It would be methods of sort of maximizing my reaction and sort of catastrophizing my reaction. Essentially, I don't know about you, but if you look back at any messages that you've received from somebody who you've called out, or you said set a boundary with, you will notice in their message that they are panicking and that they are self-soothing when they respond to you. It's, you did this, you did that. I've experienced this thing where it's called transactional analysis, and it's a psychology term where there's like a parent and a child, and they're not necessarily actually parents and children, but it's like the figure of the parent and the child. And it's like, the parent knows best, the parent's authoritative, the parent, requires the child to do things for them and, to do what they ask and so on, and they know best. And so in these messages, you might find that, the abusive person or the manipulator tries to put you back in child, treating you like, they know best, they're superior, you're the problem, you've made the mistake, you've done something wrong, you need to say sorry, and that the parent is like all-knowing, they're always correct, they're always right. That's just not true. And if you're able to literally get past that and still think to yourself, no, what I did was right and I did the right thing, that's incredible. That's incredible. Because they are hoping with their response to you that you will question yourself, you will think, wait a minute, like, are they right? Like, did I do that wrong? Like, was that really fucked up of me? Did I overreact? Did I underreact? Like, whatever it might be. They are hoping with their response that you will back down, that you will come to your senses and realise that what they did is gaslighting. It's gaslighting. They will gaslight you. What I'm describing is gaslighting. They will gaslight you into thinking, make you kind of second guess yourself and make you feel like, wait, really? I guess it wasn't that bad. No, I suppose not. And the strongest thing you can do, despite your inner feelings of questioning yourself as well, and I can imagine for people pleasers, knowing myself, it's extremely hard to do because you always think that you're the problem. So to actually think that somebody else might be the problem is like a very hard thing to actually acknowledge. But if you are able to do that, you're amazing. Like, that is so hard to do, especially in the face of somebody who has routinely never been introspective, never looked back on their own behaviour and thinks everybody else is the problem. That's hard. And especially if they've got they're malicious with their words and they insult you with it, it can be really hard to overcome and to convince yourself that you did the right thing. They're not going to leave without a fight, because they not only do they want to keep you in their trap and keep you where, you know, they prefer you, but they also want to convince you of who they think they are. And if you're putting that into question, they're going to attempt and self-soothe and try and prove to you that they're not the problem, and in fact you are. To be introspective and to reflect on their actions would be to acknowledge everything else that they've done, would be to come to the conclusion and realization that they've got a lot of work to do, and they've got a lot of work that they don't want to do. You know, most people are pretty happy to live on default. They're not actively growing most of the time. I think 90% of people are not actively growing. They kind of just like bundle along in life, getting triggered all the time, and, you know, find it hard to take accountability. I think that is literally how most people function, and it's a very sad reality. I'm sad that that's what I think, but just from my experience, it's definitely prevalent. And so to take accountability would require them to also take accountability for their participation in other people's pain outside of you, their participation in their own pain, and it is simply too overwhelming, too painful, and too uncomfortable for them, and they're not willing to do it. So it is so much easier in that situation to make it about you, make you the problem, you know, avoid taking accountability. Like, taking accountability is really hard, and most people don't want to do it. So just see it as that, rather than that you've done anything wrong. Just see it as an attempt to self-soothe, see it as an attempt by them to preserve their idea of themselves. No matter how convincing they sound, it is still them trying to, it's like them talking to themselves. Like, you were this, you were that, this wasn't me, this is how I saw it. Like, it's literally like a panicked response. It's much easier for them to see you as the villain in their story than it is to acknowledge that they were disrespectful, they were rude, they were pushy, they were using, and they were manipulative. Of course, it's much easier. So they are going to see you as the villain, not because you are, but because that's easier for them, for their brain to handle. You know, we see this all the time with people that expose the truth, because it's so much easier for everybody else to sort of bury their head in the sands. But once you know, bring truth to light, some of the people who bring truth to light, you know, in the world are some of the most hated people, more than anybody else, more than people that you think everybody would hate, you know, people who have done, you know, heinous crimes and so on. People hate people that tell the truth, because that requires them to have to take action. It instills guilt in them. So it's so much easier to distance yourself from it, disassociate from it, and blame that person for even raising the problem. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're like in a friendship group and there's like an elephant in the room that's been there and there and there for like years and years and years, and eventually you, for example, like brings it up, and then you're suddenly the problem for even acknowledging that it's there. You know, the problem was always there, but the fact that you acknowledged it makes you the problem, because everybody was happy to bury their head in the sand. They were happy to disassociate from it and, like, you know, leave it, compartmentalize it. But when you bring something to light, it's uncomfortable. People have to acknowledge it. That means they have to take action. They don't want to do action because that means they have to do the work, and the work is really hard and uncomfortable and tough. So you will become the problem. You will become the villain. Not because you are, but because you are, you know, enlightening people. You are bringing about the truth. And people don't want to fucking hear the truth. They don't, because it's simply too uncomfortable. I can't remember what the quote is. Let me see if I can find it. It's from Plato. And he literally says there's nobody hated more than people that speak the truth. So true. You know, people that are, you know, into social justice, people that, I guess, try and encourage other people to have empathy and compassion are really hated, because people don't like to be implicated, or people don't like to have to change their ways, or they don't want to experience guilt and shame and, you know, all the negative feelings that come when you realise that there's injustice, when you realise that you might have been contributing to somebody else's suffering. People don't want to acknowledge that because it's simply too overwhelming, it's simply too painful, and it causes more suffering for them. Most people are much more happy to go without the problem being acknowledged, because it makes their short-term life much easier. And I mean, following on from this is that users want you to shut the fuck up. Like, users require you to stay silent, to not put yourself first, to not have any boundaries, have endless empathy for them, because it means they get to carry on doing what they've done, which is extract energy, which is take from you, which is, you know, utilize you for their own gain. When you start speaking up, not only are they going to have to acknowledge that they've been using you the entire time, but they're also going to lose that control of using you in the future. You know, there's so much to be lost when you recognise and tell somebody that they are doing something wrong, that they have been hurtful and they have caused you suffering. That does not mean that you speaking up is inherently bad. It's a fantastic thing. It's a great thing. It actually is a great bullshit filter because it makes you realise who the users and abusers are. I definitely realised this when I have kind of like, you know, lost friends. And I hate saying the word loss because frankly, it's not a loss. Like, my life is so much better without these people. Like, I am free. But you are essentially causing them to lose control. All of that is unravelling. And again, it's fucking with their idea of themselves. They feel like they've been found out. And they're like, oh shit, somebody's found me out. And they're doing damage control. So it's just so much easier when you stay silent. And again, you know, you're not the villain for speaking up. Don't let anybody make you feel like you have done something wrong for speaking up. And they might do really subtle things, like they might say, oh, but you know, I just think it was a bit of an overreaction, or I just think, oh, you did this in the wrong way. I mean, I've had it so many times where I've brought something up and the focus has always been how I chose to bring it up, how I chose to acknowledge the issue, because they can't actually sort of come back to me with a response to the actual issue that I brought up. Like, they can't come back and be like, that's just not true. Like, they'll know that I'll be like, right, well, it is. I've experienced this, you can't deny that. What they can do is blame your reaction. What they can do is say, you overreacted. You told me at the wrong time. I've had a previous friend tell me, oh, well, I don't know why you didn't tell me this at the time. You know, I don't know, you know, just blaming the reaction rather than thinking to themselves, fucking hell, it's taken a lot for this person to bring up the problem. Clearly cares about the friendship, to even mention it, to even bring it up, because clearly, you know, I want to make the relationship better, to be able to have this discussion where, you know, one person is not suffering anymore. They won't see it like that. They won't see it as like, you know, it taking everything in you to even acknowledge it, and it coming from a place of love for that person to even bring it up in the first place. You know, they'll only see it as an attack when they are, you know, they see you as lesser than them. If they see you as like an equal to them, yes, they might initially be a bit defensive, they might be a bit shocked. That's all normal, obviously. It's, you know, nobody's a robot. But where the problem lies is when they, you know, they might express their hurt, they might express being upset, but they'll still be like, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. Thank you so much for saying this stuff. And they won't sort of try and gaslight you. They won't minimize it. They won't try and sort of diminish what you've said in any capacity. They'll just take it as, look, that person, you know, has this experience, and I might not necessarily agree, but I will still validate their experience, and I will still be like, you know what, I'm sorry that hurt you. But people that kind of prioritize their ego over the friendship, over the relationship, over the, you know, family relationship, that will get in the way. So their ego will tell them, or, you know, encourage them to almost like take the blow off them, to take the heat off them, because it's really uncomfortable. It's much easier for them to, again, self-soothe by blaming your reaction, commenting on how you did it, because that's all they've really got to go on at that point. You know, I've had people say that, you know, me setting a boundary in a very polite way was causing drama. I mean, if you see boundary setting as drama, and, you know, by the way, when you set boundaries, there's a way of doing it. You know, you cannot be being rude, being arsey. You've got to do it in a way that somebody's going to be receptive to you when you say it. So you have to say it in, you know, a way that somebody's going to be receptive to. But even when you do that, just know that there's only so much you can do. You can be as kind as you can when you set a boundary, but some people are still going to have a problem with the boundary. Some people are still going to see it as drama, as confrontational, as over the top, as, you know, a problem, simply because of the fact that you are setting a boundary. And when it gets to that point, you know that they were just preferring you when you were silent, when you didn't say anything. People that say, oh, well, you know, now there's confrontation, now there's beef. It's like, well, yes, but there's always been sort of turmoil and anxiety and, you know, conflict for me, but there just never has been for you. So for that person, it's always been, you know, rainbow fairyland, because in order to have that exist for them, the other person has had to suffer, the other person has had to put their needs behind, the other person has had to give everything to them. So of course they're going to be seeing it as over the top drama, because that's not their experience with you. Their experience with you has always been them to take, them to always get what they want. But that has obviously caused you suffering, that has caused you turmoil. So it's always been a battle for you. But now suddenly there's pushback and it's a slight battle for them, and it's a slight, problem for them. And they will see it as problematic and a, beef. Whose peace have you been protecting? Because they're going to get upset if you suddenly start protecting your peace, and which might require them to stop having peace for a bit. If you have constantly been protecting their peace, they're going to see you claiming back that peace for yourself as offensive, as a direct attack on their peace and causing them to lack peace. That's not because you've done anything wrong. It's just because that dynamic where you have been the peacekeeper and you have been the one to protect their peace over yours has now been dismantled, has now kind of crumbled. And they're going to get cross with you about it because you've been maintaining it for so long. And so they're expecting you to continue to maintain it. And now that you're being like, I'm going to actually prioritize myself, they're going to see that as a personal attack. There was this sort of unwritten contract that you both signed that was, while I give all my energy, put your needs first, abandon myself, then you, the other person, can be happy, content, and get everything that they want from the situation. It's like they're seeing it as like you breaking the contract of their friendship when you start to set boundaries, because it premised on the fact that you lacked boundaries, that you couldn't stand up for yourself, and that you shut the fuck up. And when that contract is broken, it's going to be seen as you being the problem, you being the villain, you being the one to create turmoil and, friction. But it's not. You're just choosing your peace over them and over protecting their peace. And frankly, that is a very incredible thing to do, just because you're going to be attacked for it from either side. God, I've lost sort of auxiliary friends because I've chosen to step away from a friend. I've lost friends in the process of standing up for myself to a mutual friend. And that fucks with you so much. And so I totally understand why it's so uncomfortable to be seen as the villain. But I will reiterate again that simply by being seen as the villain, you are winning, because you are shedding yourself of abusers. You are shedding your life and your space of people that required you to abandon yourself and required you to be a lesser version of yourself in order to be around them. That's a fucking win. You get to bring all that energy back to yourself. So embody that villain era, because it is a sign of your growth and your confidence and your backing of yourself. And even the kind of other friends that you lose in that process, the people that sort of pick the side of the user, you're actually fucking with their idea of the friendship as well, because you're putting into question, their friendship too. Because it's so much more comfortable, if you think about it, to not believe the person who's bringing the problems to light. So not only that, separately, despite whatever the user says, the problem person says, separate from that, it is so uncomfortable for those other friends to acknowledge that they might have to review the friendship, that they might have to think twice about this person as well. So that actually it's just much more comfortable for them to just think that the other person, so you in this example bringing it up, is the problem. That's much more comfortable, especially if they're proximate to that person, especially if they, are close with that person, because it actually is I guess an insult to their choice of friends as well. You're insulting their judgment at the same time. And then on top of that, if that user, manipulator, whoever it is that you've called out, then starts whispering in their ear and do an entire character assassination, no wonder. This is what happens, I think, in sort of narcissistic situations, is that the narcissist sort of maintains all the relationships because they're charismatic. They unfortunately spin it so that the other person stays isolated and they feel like they're alone and that they feel like they're the problem. And it's such a fucked up thing to do. The abuser is going to rally round people to be on their side, to make you feel isolated, to convince you that you did something wrong by even standing up for yourself, by setting a boundary. And those other people are going to see you as the villain as well, because it's much easier for them to just believe that person, not only for their own self and to validate their own judgment, to validate their own position in that friendship, in that group, and to stay, you know, in the tribe, but also because they've had people, you know, they haven't necessarily heard your side, they haven't necessarily had the option to like see it from your point of view, and they kind of go with like the herd, they go with, you know, what the majority think. And it's a very big thing to actually go with what the minority think, even if that minority is actually bringing up truth, even if that minority is relatable, and that, you know, the other people around, the auxiliary people around, can actually see there's truth to that, but it's just too uncomfortable to acknowledge. They're just gonna continue to do what the abuser does, which is make you the problem, make you the villain, make you the baddie. It's a very, very fucked up thing to do to somebody. Either way, just embrace it, and see it as a win, see it as something to be celebrated, because it is. You're, like I said, you're ridding yourself of people that suck. You're purging your life of people, spaces and places that do not serve you and do not make you feel good, and the right people will come along. You're like contributing to your fulfillment. You're contributing every time you stand up for yourself. You are choosing yourself. You are, you know, staying true to who you are. You're not abandoning yourself. And then you're going to attract people that do not require you to abandon yourself in order to be around them. And that is beautiful. And it's okay to be on your own for a bit. It's okay to like just be like, you know what, people aren't going to see my side. I'm going to be misunderstood. I'm going to be gaslit, and I'm going to have my character assassinated. But that's where the true growth lies, in that you still know, despite all of that, especially as a recovering people pleaser, because like part of the whole people pleaser thing is that you care so much about being liked, but when you literally abandon that and you're like, you know what, I'm okay with not being liked, and I'm okay with being seen as like the baddie, that is a massive contribution to your healing. A huge contribution to your healing. You have literally single-handedly proved to yourself that you can survive, you are strong, and that you are better off without people that utilize you. And that despite the insults, despite being gaslit, despite having your experience minimized, you still stuck to your guns. Like, that's actually incredible. You should be so proud of yourself for doing that. Not many, like literally 99% of people could not do that. And yet here you are, doing what's literally some of the scariest stuff in the world. Like, you know, cavemen were so scared of being socially isolated that our caveman brain sees it as genuinely painful. Like I read somewhere that being ostracized or feeling like you've been rejected or left out is like physically painful for the human body. And I think the fact that you're then having to deal with physical, emotional, mental pain and trauma from that, and you're still following through with it, is incredible. Like, pat yourself on the back. And you're creating room not only for yourself and your dreams and people that matter to you, but also new people that are more aligned with you. And that's so exciting. Anyway, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it resonated. I hope that you feel reassured, validated, that you're doing the right thing, that you should power through, that the villain era is actually something to celebrate. Tell me your experiences. Talk to me about like what you've experienced, you know, with friendships, relationships, family members. I really want to know. I hope you have a fantastic remainder of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.